So please take a moment to look at the newsletters that you're receiving every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. A couple other notes: we're here to provide continuing education to our members as well. So remember that this year we need to complete our 24 health and safety welfare hours by the end of the year. The AIA Miami also has continuing education opportunities in addition to the town hall meetings. So participate in those. Most of those, you can get all your credit hours before the end of the year. And with that, I'd like to take it back to Cheryl, who will introduce the panelists for today. Thank you.
Thanks, Daphne. And I'll welcome today's Power Women panel. I'm excited to have such great participants this week. First, let me introduce Yi Bellinger. Yi is the Interior Studio Director at Nelson Worldwide. Yi, I looked down, so I didn't see if you waved, but Diana Farmer-Gonzalez, Principal and Managing Director in Miami for Gensler. Danette Linares, Vice Chairman for Blanca Commercial Real Estate. And Amy Manley, Global Lead Workplace Performance Strategies at Jacobs. So welcome, everyone, and I'm happy to have you. I see that the panel is muted, so unmute yourself so you don't forget when you go to speak, like we all do sometimes. And let's get started. So I think, you know, an interesting place to start would be what are you hearing from your clients? Diana, you want to start with that?
Sure. So we, our Gensler Research Institute, once we went into the COVID-19 work from home back in March, we're hearing and reaching out to our clients on a regular basis, and we sent out a survey to about 3,000 participants. We got results from about 2,300 of our clients in 10, actually not from our clients, we went outside of our client base or outside of Gensler and got in 10 industries, what we call the WPI, or the Work from Performance Index, that we use for our workplace surveys every 2 years. And this was a work from home survey that looked at basically 3 modes of work. We asked participants, how did you work before you went to work from home? What is it like to work from home now? What's your experience? And what do you expect or anticipate would be the workplace of the future post-COVID, or even returning to the office during COVID prior to having a vaccine? The results were very interesting. We saw that the majority of participants want to come back into the office. So only 12% of the participants in the survey actually want a full-time 5 days a week work from home. That means that 82% want to be fully back into an office environment or a hybrid of virtual and analog physical experience. But the overwhelming majority, we were very surprised by this kind of result. And then we asked, you know, what do you miss the most from being in the office environment? And the #1 percentage respondents was meeting and connecting with colleagues face to face. It was the people connection, the collaboration connection. Another nuance or interesting outcome that we got from the survey is that younger generations are feeling less productive. We all saw that we all became very productive because our time on Zoom calls, GoToMeeting webinars are pretty planned out throughout the day. There's less spontaneity in chance encounters in between meetings in the pantry or with clients. So we're seeing a productivity go up, but there's a less set of a satisfaction, particularly from our younger generations of, millennials and Generation Z, that they feel less productive at home and less satisfied with the work from home experience. You have to imagine a lot of our younger staff or clients that we heard from their staff may be living alone or isolated from, and so the connections that are happening, but also the satisfaction of knowing that the work that is being produced, and this is across all the 10 industries that we, interviewed, that there was less satisfaction in the productivity of the work.
That's interesting. And I know your firm did a survey within the firm, within all the offices of the firm. Am I right?
Yes. So Nelson polled a survey within our organization, which is about 25 offices across the nation, to see how people felt about working remotely. And we polled between productivity, focus, and work-life balance and harmony. And I think, to echo Diana's point, it's the satisfaction part that's missing. While a lot of people appreciate not having to commute and not having to do the long hours because they have to be at an office, they miss the flexibility. I think that's what's missing. It's not that we don't like working from home, it's we're missing the flexibility of being able to connect and collaborate when we need to or when we just want to. And then the younger folks are missing the mentorship and the leadership. And it's the casual mentorship that we're all losing out nowadays, because you don't get to just stop by your director's office or your principals and see what they think about your work anymore. Now everything is so structured. For meetings, any kind of feedback has to be a scheduled Zoom call. So I think we are losing some of that human connection. And so the results are pretty split as well. We thought that a lot more people would love working from home, but actually what we love is the flexibility to be able to work from home when we need to, but collaborate and have that connection what we all crave.
So thanks, Yi. So Amy, I know that Jacobs has done surveys as well, and you've reached out, but what kind of discussions have you been having around adapting workplaces to post-COVID?
It's very interesting. Just to comment on my two colleagues and the surveys that they've done, both externally and internally, we found some of the similarities, but some a bit different. Within Jacobs, we polled our worldwide staff, which is approximately 55,000 people across a diverse work business lines. And one of the things that we found was that 85% of them wanted to continue in some way a remote work program. But I think, Yi, to your point, which was quite interesting within Nelson, is that we found very similar comments from our younger staff or less experienced staff, that the mentorship was missing, but in many regards, they also felt empowered because they were able to make decisions they needed to very quickly in order to advance their work. And oftentimes, as we know, some managers are less flexible and more demanding of that decision making. And so they did feel empowered. So it's very interesting that it's, these sort of the dichotomy in the answers, right, in what people are saying. But what we've been talking about with some of our customers, I had an interesting conversation this morning, was very much about the fact that in some regards, they've come to terms with the fact that there is an initial need to return essential staff to work. Whether or not, depending on the type of work that they're doing, many organizations really do have essential staff, whether they're in the pharma communities and they're doing science. I was saying to someone the other day, it's really hard to do chemistry in your kitchen sink unless you're, an 8-year-old. and that they need to be in a place where they can do those kinds of things. And it runs across all kinds of industries for essential work. And they're feeling is very comfortable in prioritizing work for that staff, and allowing staff that can actually work quite well remotely to remain remote until such a time when they feel confident in the health and wellness of those employees. But I think right now, the largest challenge that our clients have is sort of the long-term view. Either they have projects in construction, and what do we possibly do with this building that we're either in design or construction and we're investing significant amounts of money, or further, what do we do for the long term? How will we frame and reshape COVID? So we've been talking to customers a lot about pausing, sort of looking internally and inward and really understand kind of their culture and how they value place within their culture, and to go back to their mission and vision, so that they can look to the future. Where do they want to be in that, let's say, 2 or 3 year period, so that they can drive to the future of work for their own organization and quiet the noise from the outside and really understand who they are, and what they want their business to be and how they want their people to perform will be, well suited towards sort of a new approach. So it is a challenge, and it's quite hard right now, but that pause is somewhat beneficial.
And we're going to get back to all of the designers in a minute, but I want to pivot over to Danette and ask, there are a couple of issues. One is, how is commercial building management adapting, and how is all of this affecting the marketplace, at least in South Florida?
So thanks, Cheryl, for having me and putting this together. The buildings are working really hard to welcome the tenants back. The landlords are establishing and implementing social distancing guidelines throughout the building in the common areas. They're focusing on health and safety is paramount, as well as air quality. They're looking at features to clean the air, the ultraviolet rays in the air conditioning system. Their janitorial crews are really focused on the cleaning elements and chemicals that they're using, hospital grade chemicals to clean the offices. They're asking tenants to take away all of the papers off the desk after they leave the office, so that a cleaning crew could come in and clean well. It's really a top priority for buildings. We see buildings all over. At least we lease about 6 million square feet of office, over 6 million square feet. And you see now the decals on the floor, the signage, wayfinding, limiting elevator capacity, 2 to 4 per elevator, depending on the building. You have to go one way in, one way out. And there are a lot of controls, but it's really important. Safety has become very paramount, and obviously for all landlords. And as far as the market is concerned, we have actually seen an uptick in activity. I just got a call this morning at 8:30 in the morning from somebody who's coming in from Chicago that's interested in leasing office space. We've gotten calls for 2,000 square feet, 20,000 square feet, several of them within the last 3 weeks. And we have traditionally gotten great calls from companies that are coming from the Northeast, because we have great weather, our tax advantage, quality of life here in Miami. But this has been pretty incredible, and I'm very optimistic of the outlook for South Florida.
That's really interesting to hear that people want to come. So we can fill up some of these office buildings that we've built, all our recent condos and office buildings that we built. So
yeah,
Diana,
well, we get a lot of questions about if companies are going to downsize and shed space, and is that going to add more space in the market, sublease space? And to some extent it might. However, because we do have such a high demand of office for Miami now, that we see a net neutral. Not only that, but of course, the social distancing and how tenants are going to have to program their space. We were so used to people coming in and trying to jam as many people as possible with bench style seating and all sorts of things. But now they have to get, CDC requires 6-foot separation. So I think that's going to help the office absorption as well.
So along those lines, Diana, what kind of innovations do you see, or changes do you see in terms of commercial spaces?
Well, one thing is, and I think every panelist can agree, the workplace will never be the same. The office space or any space, whether it be an airport or education space, there's all these considerations. So we see touchless technology being a big, and voice activated technology for everything from doors to elevators, that you're going to see that those technologies catapulted. Also, smart technologies within buildings, that understanding sensors on how space is being used, and that you're going to potentially, we're seeing, for instance, in our own office that we're designing, we're moving into 545 Wynn, which is a building in Wynwood that Gensler designed, and we're occupying one of the floors. And we were in the middle of design during when COVID pandemic hit. We actually ended up redesigning our entire space to be anticipating what is the future of workplace, like who will actually be in the office, how will we be interacting with clients in our space, how are we going to reinforce the experience of how you do focused work versus collaborative work. We definitely see that digital technology and the digital world is here to stay, but there's going to be an emphasis and a desire for analog experiences. So that that blend of analog with high technology around voice and touchless technology, and smart sensors for spaces, and the digital experience.
That's interesting as well. Your firm does a lot of interior projects as well around the country. And have you been talking amongst the firm about different ways to approach the designs?
Yes, so Nelson actually put together an initiative called Spark, which is a space planning assessment in response to COVID-19. Basically, it's a package where we go in and help our clients analyze different strategies that they can use, from a base package to a premium to an expanded package, on how they can approach their space. So very simply, just doing spaghetti diagrams on circulation, looking at staggered space planning, looking at divisions and giving people a little bit more privacy. So those are like some of the base package that we would offer and help our clients analyze and go through that exercise. But then more expanded packages would be like going into looking at the infrastructure of the building, going beyond what landlords require, but doing an analysis of the entire site, the campus even, depending on some of the project scope. If it's education or healthcare, we go a little bit more deeper. But in tenant spaces or medical office buildings, we work with the landlord as well as the tenant space itself, the client itself, to look at different ways to strategize. So for example, one of our clients in 1450 Brickell has already asked us to look at helping them do the physical distancing. So instead of the typical 44 to 48 inch aisles, now they are truly looking at 6 feet aisles, which, this time last year that was unheard of. Like, why would you do that to your space? But they're looking at taking extra lease space and everything, just to give their staff that sense of, we're doing something to keep you safe, which it's great for commercial business, for us, for the clients. It's good to be looking at these solutions proactively. So that's Nelson's approach in returning to the space.
Thanks. Amy, do you think that health will be forefront in the design now, and well building standards and so forth, that's something that clients are going to look for or ask for or demand maybe?
I think demand is the right answer. I was going to say yes, yes, and yes. I think as designers, architects, and real estate professionals, we have seen over the last few years this real move to integrating not just sustainability, but sustainability, health, and wellness into work environments and into all spaces. To Diana's point, this will impact all space types, whether it's airports or train stations, or office buildings or lobbies. That health and wellness is critical. And I think that one of the things we've been talking about with clients is that ongoing real-time measuring and monitoring through sensors, not just whether or not people are in their seats, because I think that's become somewhat irrelevant, but what about this space needs to be modified real time for indoor air quality. Is the air being exchanged at the rate that we want it to be? What are the acoustical properties? What are the lighting, both the lighting from our the ambient lighting, but also circadian lighting? All of those things are going to be, I think, front and central in how we will be developing space. And I think that integrated digital technology is going to be at the forefront of that.
I wanted to add a comment about that, because we're leasing this new building, One Cocoa Walk in Coconut Grove. And we are working with a law firm that's about to lease about 15,000 square feet. And that building has individual heat pumps, so the tenants can control and monitor their air conditioning system and their air filtration system. And that actually was a really big selling point for that tenant, because based on, they didn't think about it before until this hit. And they thought, you know what, that's actually very good because I can control. And that was, they also thought of it from an employee retention standpoint and attracting new attorneys. And buildings are also, landlords and tenants are also looking at what are the other features that buildings are offering. For instance, green spaces, if there are any quiet spaces, brain break rooms to offer the tenants as well, and apps. So there are some buildings that are in our portfolio that are coming up. We just came up with an app where tenants can go online, they can do virtual yoga, meditation, really mindful seminars. And so landlords are looking at all these different things because it is becoming very important to employers in order for employee retention, as well as just their productivity.
So along those lines, Diana, what do you see as a really long-term effect on all of this on design?
Operations vision for by any company, their culture and what drives them around the purpose is going to be an essential point of design. It's not a one-size-fits-all. Each organization is having to dig in deep. If you look back at, we did a if you look at where workplace or any design was heading, particularly like in our lifestyle projects, the human experience was the most paramount on drawing anyone to a retail center or to an education facility or to an airport. It was what's my experience like? And now you're going to overlay the health and wellness piece that has always been in the background and now going to be in the foreground, along with how our company's going to be able to pivot very quickly operationally for any future pandemic or natural disaster. We talked when we were prepping for this panel yesterday, and I think it's an important point. If this pandemic would have hit 5 years ago, many of the people that are even on this call would be unemployed, because we just did not have the technology and the global platforms and technology to be able to collaborate virtually in the same way that we're able to now as architects and designers. And the banking industry, the professional services industry, the consumer goods industry is in the same boat. So what we're looking at Gensler is, what is the future of workplace? Like, who really needs to be in the workplace? How are we engaging in clients in those spaces? And how is the operational as well as the business performance mission aligned to design? So if we thought that design performance was important before this COVID, it is even more important now in the future.
You know, I keep hearing that from everyone. I see you nodding, Amy.
Yeah.
You want to comment?
No, I couldn't agree more with Diana on that. That the purpose of place and the purpose of the organization are going to be inextricably tied together, and that it is going to be a challenge for clients. They will need to dig deep to figure out exactly what that looks like. And I think that there will be some modifications in how they shape their space, and it will be very cultural centric, and it will be predicated on the human experience. So I couldn't agree with you more.
So, and along those lines, one of the things we talked about earlier and yesterday in our brief conversation was maybe changes with live, work, play, and you know, how offices are set up to deal with that. Yi, do you want to comment on that?
Well, I think between live, work, play, the lines have already been blurred, right? And and we were probably headed that direction already, but now with COVID and with the ability for many of the organizations to be able to allow their people to work remotely, the whole live, work, play thing is definitely going to be even more focused and centralized when we return, right? I think it's important to keep in mind that people come to the workplace because they're passionate about what they do and they want to be in that space. So it's important to keep that not as an afterthought, but as a tool for acquisition, talent acquisition, as well as retention. And the way we blur those lines really, you know, it helps us move forward in design. And I think that's more evident now than ever.
You know, I wanted to add something on that, Cheryl. What's also a really big challenge is going to have to do around policy and privacy, because not only are the workforce, but the public. You saw that in hospitality. In hospitality, if a hotel got a good review, but their hotel room didn't feel clean, but they had great services, you know, that was on social media immediately. Well, you're going to see that blurring into every aspect of our world, meaning the workplace. You see real-time feedback happening around everything from Glassdoor. You're going to see other platforms besides Glassdoor having something to say. Now, who goes back into the workplace right now during the COVID times crosses over to some items that are, you know, are private, having to do with people's health and wellness. Are they taking care of somebody aging? Do they have underlying health conditions? So as this information gets publicized through data, how we filter that data and how that gets communicated, companies are grappling with policy and privacy along every aspect of their business. So we're seeing that across every sector that we design in. And as architects and designers, we have to be aware that that's the landscape, that we have to think a little further and help our clients solve those problems as well.
I think it's also making employees feel and tenants feel safe and welcomed back. And also the flexibility aspect is huge, especially now. In our office, we were able to go back to the office. office buildings have been open because there are essential services, like attorneys are considered essential services. Construction is essential service. But we got back to the office the day after Memorial Day weekend, and we have a schedule in our office. So I have Tuesdays and Thursdays in the office, and so we have 50% capacity because that's where we are in Miami. But our CEO Terry Blanco was very open. Look, if you don't feel comfortable, it's fine. We understand. We've worked very well from home. With what we do is we have to be on site showing office space, but we have figured out a way to do virtual tours. We took tons of pictures, sending floor plans. We've all done several lease transactions and completed renewals and new deals, fortunately, during this time. But I think right now, flexibility is key, and also just making people, tenants and employees feel safe when they go back to the office.
Yeah.
Excuse me for interrupting, but I just thought I'd let you know that Amy is in the middle of a pretty bad thunderstorm, and she may drop in and out. So just so you know, she's not on the screen.
She dropped out now. That's one of the negatives to having everything online. So hopefully we'll get Amy back.
I wanted to add one thing, Cheryl, to Danette's comment that we, in our Back to the Office survey, the number one response, people feeling comfortable coming back, was a combination of more space, more cleaning, and stricter sick policies being required. So how that gets enforced, 55% of our respondents said stricter policies against coming to work sick.
Yeah.
That was the number one response.
Wow.
Interesting.
Increased opportunities to work from home and increased office cleaning as well as social distancing. So it's really been very fascinating. And then how you implement that's what every organization, no matter how large or small, is grappling with that. In addition to grappling with, if we wait too long to actually come back to the office, what are we saying to the market? What are we saying to our clients? So there's this whole, there's a perception piece that companies are also grappling with. Who needs to actually be present in the market that they're back at the office.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's very true. So we're right around the time where we open up for Q&A, and I have a couple of questions here. One of them is, have you seen any increase or anticipated increase in costs of materials, construction materials, due to the pandemic, maybe from slowdown in factories or production? And along those lines, before you guys answer, we're going to have our next town hall is with a few of our allied members, and we're encouraging our allied members to call in and to talk about that and to see how their organizations are faring. Have you seen anything around those areas?
In terms of increase in cost for regular materials, I don't think so. However, I know that clients are making more intentional choices with what they want in their space, and they have asked us, of course, specify products that are more durable, cleanable. So the choices of materials perhaps are more intentional, and I wouldn't say they're more expensive. I mean, we've been using a lot of these materials in the healthcare setting for a very long time. I just think that now we're more aware of them, and we want to cross-collaborate that effort into workplace design in all the spaces that we come home to.
I've seen, just to add to that,
Okay.
I've seen buildings ask for, or tenants ask for materials that are local versus something that has to be imported because of whether it's going to arrive, when it'll arrive, really time sensitive.
You know,
Anna?
it's interesting. We heard some clients trying to take advantage of potential slowdown on maybe rebidding out materials. And I can tell you in South Florida, because construction never stopped and South Florida was considered an essential business, we're not seeing a reduction in cost. And we're not, we're hearing a couple of supply chain issues around things coming out of Italy or Europe or China, but it's not really impacting schedules as we had anticipated
So far.
so far.
So far.
Uh,
So
We
far.
had a project where we had to change some materials because it was coming from China and Europe. So
So we'll see. And before we, I'm just looking to see any other questions. I guess one related to that is, have you seen any delays? And Danae, you said they wanted to make sure things are local, but have you guys seen any kind of major delays in getting materials that had already been ordered?
there
Deanna?
was, yeah, we ended up having to, in one of the a tenant construction project in one of our buildings, it was going to delay the materials about 60 days. And so they had to change the material and they had to source something locally. I think the marble was coming out of Italy in this case. So that's one concrete example of what we're seeing. And so now what we're doing is we're building out spec suites because there is a high demand for tenants that want to come into the market and need something right away. So landlords are being proactive in building out spec suites, but now all the materials really are anything that's local, something that you can drive to Florida and bring in instead of having to rely on whether it's air or, you know, some other cargo service.
The only
But-
delay I've seen were in textiles a little bit when the mills shut down for a couple of weeks back in March and April, like in Michigan, Grand Rapids spaces. But they're all back, so I haven't seen too many problems.
I have another question here. She says she worries that a trend towards working from home will affect the growth of the new generation that is starting out as much of our developing what we learned from our peers. And that was something that we talked about early on, that you were talking about how mentoring, and I think all of you have had that situation, as there's so much that we learn from mentoring that
Yeah.
it doesn't happen in quite the same way.
It doesn't quite happen in the same way through Zoom. I mean, I know I'm actually working with a coworker right now in our Orlando office that started one day before our office closed for the pandemic. So he's actually never been to the office. So that's a little difficult, yeah. But he's, you know, he jumped on like three of our major projects right away, and he just been working remotely since March 17. You know, there's a little bit difficulty in that because he didn't really get a chance to like meet people face to face, and he certainly didn't get a chance to be exposed to the culture too much. But you know, we do what we can. We reach out often, and we do a lot of these Zoom calls. We try to make sure that our cameras are turned on, so at least he knows who we are. You know, and we do that with all of our younger staff. We try to meet regularly. Our CEO, Nelson, does a great job in putting out a video message weekly just to keep all of us informed and everything transparent. So we at least understand that this is our tribe, and we feel a very strong sense of belonging. But you are correct. I think returning to a physical workplace is paramount in helping us continue our culture, and especially allow our younger people to learn and grow in more organic ways that we were all privy to.
I see you nodding, Deanna.
Oh, absolutely, 1000% agree. This is what we are grappling with right now. We had actually 3 people that had started the week that we went to work from home. Fortunately, 2 of them came from other Gensler offices, so they understood how we work at Gensler and what the kind of the cultural expectation is around collaboration. but it's not, you know, when you're working with teams for the first time, there's just all these nuances that happen in the physical space around how you work together as a team. So we have to be much more intentional about that. And we have seen such a rise in educational programs. You know, at Gensler, we have LinkedIn Learning, which used to be lynda.com, that's available to all our employees, as well as you've seen on social media, you know, the master classes or any other classes. You know, I'm relearning Spanish, for instance. You know, my Spanish is un poco malo. Depende de, you know, who I'm speaking with. So, you know, I'm on Babbel on, you know, when I go for my walks. I think learning from all different types of platforms. And if companies today want to really capture their next generation of employees, they're grappling with a combination of third-party learning as well as cultural adaptation and learning, and how are we going to have learning happening in the virtual world. So
and we all know how important the culture is to a happy workplace, and it's hard to have culture amongst people when you're not in, you know, in person talking. I see a question that we addressed this a little bit, but let's talk about this a little bit more. So have you seen a reduction in square footage needed specific to, this is to Danette, expiring leases with people working from home? And you talked about it a little bit early on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we have seen some tenants, we've renewed several tenants, and they have not reduced their square footage, which was a great thing. But we are seeing some tenants, the smaller tenants that are either closing, and what I'm saying small, like 1,000 square feet, 1,500 square feet, that have decided that they just, you know, perhaps they're better off just working from home right now, and they're going to sit it out. But from the most part, we have seen tenants just stay where they are with the square footage. They might be, some of them are renewing for a shorter term, whereas they were looking to renew for 5 years. Some of them have renewed for a year, 2, 3 years, because they just want to, they're kind of a wait and see, but they still need their office presence. And then the tenants that have downsized, which haven't been that many, we've actually had other tenants come in and backfill the space. So right now, things are good because the Miami market is really hot in office, and we have a lot of companies coming in from out of state that want to establish their offices in Miami now, because they're coming from the Northeast. They, you know, first they were hit with the pandemic, and really quality of life for them wasn't that good. And now, you know, what's going on with the protests have actually sped things up for them, and they said, you know, that's probably the last straw. And I would say that in Miami, we've had pretty good mayors. They closed down our city very quickly, early on, more so earlier than a lot of other places. And I think that's helped us as well here.
That's true. So one of the things I like to ask our panelists is, as we near the end of our program, is words of wisdom, or, you know, what is the most important thing that you'd like people to take away? Why don't we start with you, Yi?
I think keeping an open mind is really important, knowing that this is going to be an ever-evolving, moving target. So it's important to look at different innovations, but I think keeping an open mind so that we know what's important to people, you know, live. Like we want feedback right away, and just being open. Also, organizational culture. Like we definitely have to put people's wellness and health front and center. And that, I think, will continue to drive us to be successful, not only in design, but just in our culture, in our companies, and for our clients.
I see, before I go to you, Deanna, I see that Amy was able to reconnect by dialing in. So sorry that we lost you, Amy. And we've started to talk about, as we near the end of our discussion, kind of words of wisdom, or the most important thing that you want people to take away from this conversation. Are you there? Okay, well, maybe give her a second to see if, well, let me go to you, Deanna, while we see if Amy can make her speaker work.
I would say for everyone to keep an open mind, that as you had said, but more importantly, this is a 100-year event. We're in the middle of history that's happening around the world, and we are going to get on the other side. I've shared this perspective. After 9/11, travel was never the same. So this is an opportunity. Our CEOs at Gensler has shared what they've heard from clients from the Fortune 100 and Fortune 500 is that this is the Great Reset. So this is an opportunity for us to actually reset our priorities and what's important. This whole idea of a work-life balance, unfortunately, when we are in a pandemic, the fear factor and also with the social unrest and the challenges that are truly affecting every part of public and private life is being thought-provoking about where our values are and how we want to spend our time, what we want to purchase, what we want, where we want to live, where we want to work. It's a time for us to really be thoughtful, but just for the young folks that are here, this is a time to really practice your resilience and openness to, you're in the middle of history. And we are, my favorite saying is, necessity is the mother of invention. We are going to see so much innovation and invention, and no other place more than in design of spaces and design of objects that are going to be used.
We always say architects are problem solvers, and I think that's you all are going to be working hard to do that. And I think, Amy, you're back, and we're kind of at this last question of what are some parting words, or one of the most important things you want to share?
Thank you, and I do apologize. We had a major storm go through. We all still need power. I would say that one of the things that our team has really been considering is that everything is going to become more deliberate and purposeful. Leadership will become more purposeful and deliberate. Mentoring, learning, all of those things are going to be essential. And that we're going to have to be much more planful in how we do it. And if we don't, we will fail. Organizations will fail without clear and deliberate leadership and advancement and mentoring of our people.
I think that's very important. And don't worry, Amy, things happen. I cleaned that up, and what I normally say. And we'll call you back for another program. Danette, parting words?
I would say people matter most. Health, safety, and flexibility are very important, and take advantage of this moment. Like Deanna said, it's a moment to reset, to really rethink how you're living life, what's going on. I think it's a great opportunity. We have to look at the rainbow at the end of this big rain shower or rainstorm. But I think, the most important thing is people matter most. And if you take care of your people, you will do really well.
Let's not waste the pandemic, right? Let's not waste the crisis. Let's get proactive.
Right. Mm-hmm.
I think with everything that's going on now, the pandemic and the other issues, let's not waste opportunities to do better.
Mm-hmm.
So Daphne, I'm going to surprise and ask you that same question. What are some parting words that you want to share?
Oh, first of all, I appreciate the positivity from the entire panel. I've been just jotting down some of these notes, keeping an open mind, the importance of the organizational culture, leadership, being deliberate, purposeful, and clear. People matter most. That this is a 100-year event. I concur with all those comments, and I think for me, my parting words are: we need to move on. We're going to get through it. We're going to be innovative. We're going to solve the problems, and we're going to come out stronger, with better ideas, and hopefully we'll be able to push our way through and make some of these changes permanent. I think one of my concerns is that we have an opportunity to make a change to be permanent, and that we shouldn't just allow this to be suggestions, that we need to take more of an initiative to require permanent change in our codes, so that we can encourage this is the right thing to do. Wellness for our people in the workplace. So thank you again for everyone's positive comments.
Thanks, Daphne. I want to thank each of you for your time today, for your insightful comments. And I want to thank all of you that have tuned in to us. And I see a lot of new names, a lot of names, a lot of old friends and new friends. And if you're not an AIA member, think about membership. We'd love to have you. And again, thank you, everyone. I don't know if anybody else, Colleen, you came on. Is there anything you need to share regarding the, no? Okay.
No, just join us for Town Hall 10 next week at noon.
Oh, one more. Yes, join us this Friday for our first urban redesign program. I think it's going to be really interesting. And if you haven't seen the invitation for that, shoot us an email, Colleen at AIA Miami or Cheryl at AIA Miami, and we'll send you the information. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you very much. Take care.